In September 2025, I went with the Bowburn Cub Scouts on a walk round part of Bowburn to look at some places of historical interest. I had prepared a longer route than we actually had time to complete, and this slideshow only covers the first 20 stopping points shown on this map. I hope to compile another slideshow later, part 2, about the places we didn't manage to explore this time. We started in Bowburn Community Centre, noting that 120 years ago, although there were seams of coal beneath our feet, nearly all you would have been able to see from there, except perhaps Tursdale Colliery in the distance, 2 pubs next to the main Durham to Stockton Road and a few houses up near where today's traffic lights are, would have been fields, farmland. This slide shows how close the coal was to the surface in some places. It also shows how thin a seam of coal dug out from underground might have been. It shows a seam that was uncovered before the new A688 road was constructed. In the 1800s, men had lain on their backs with pickaxes to cut out lumps of coal, leaving long pillars to hold the roof up above their heads. With modern machinery, it was possible to remove that roof and dig out what had been left behind some 170 years ago. There were other seams of coal much deeper than this, all around us, and so when work first started on Bowburn Colliery, there were already collieries at Sherburn and Kellow, as well as at Tursdale. There had previously been coal mines at Shincliffe, Whitwell, Cassop, Coxoe, Quarrington Hill and near Park Hill, and there had been an unsuccessful attempt to start one in Bowburn in 1840, but that never produced any coal. The map here shows the area between Shincliffe in the north and Coxoe in the southeast. The light blue lines are streams or becks, and I'll return to them later, but the red dots are coal mines that have at some time been worked near Bowburn. Of these, only Tursdale Colliery was still working in 1906. All the others had closed in the 19th century, or even before that, except Bowburn Colliery, which was new. That began to be sunk in that year. There was no colliery here before 1906, just farmland. We started our walk at Bowburn Community Centre. This was the second miners' welfare hall and institute, built only 6 years before the colliery closed. It cost £74,000 and was opened on the 22nd of July 1961, that's 64 years ago, by Mr. W.L. Lowson, who had been the colliery manager till he retired that January. The original institute, a large wooden hut, was opened on 26th of February 1921, 50 years earlier, by the then colliery owners, Bell Brothers Limited. The 1961 tute still belongs to the Coal Industry Social Welfare Organisation, but is now leased to Bowburn Community Association, which was formed in 1978, and is now known as Bowburn Community Centre. The centre was modernised in 2009, thanks, like the park, to the Regeneration Fund that was set up with money from the sale of council land to the Durham Villages Regeneration Company. In the foyer of the centre, there are various brass memorial plaques. One lists 35 of the 56 local men killed in World War I. This was donated by Bell Brothers Limited and unveiled at the official opening of the old institute in 1921. There is also a book of remembrance with a page dedicated to each of the men who were killed in World War II. Another brass plaque lists the 52 men killed at Bowburn Colliery. This was dedicated on the 16th of December 2006. Others include one in honour of and memory of the Aycliffe Angels, women who worked in the munitions factory at Aycliffe during World War II, and other plaques commemorate individuals who have served the local community in various ways. Before we left the community centre, we looked at the Bowburn Centenary Banner, which on one side shows some mining scenes, some notable local buildings, and the heapstead, the structure over the main downcast shaft of Bowburn Colliery. Then we set off to see where that had been. Gertrude Bell, the famous explorer, mountaineer, writer and Middle East diplomat, sometimes called Gertrude of Arabia, was the daughter of Sir Hugh Bell, chairman of ironmasters and colliery owners Bell Brothers Limited. On the 3rd of July 1906, she cut a ceremonial sod to begin the sinking of a new pit at Bowburn. It was sunk to a depth of 579 feet, that's 176.4 metres. The first coals were drawn from here on the 7th of June 1908, and Bowburn Colliery went on to become the biggest inland coal producer in the Durham coalfield, mining up to 14,000 tonnes, that's 14.2 million kilograms of coal every day in the mid-1950s, when it employed about 2,500 men. It closed in 1967, with last coals drawn on the 20th of July 1967, and was finally abandoned on the 1st of June 1968. This photograph, taken just after the colliery closed, shows the headgear over this shaft on the right, and another one, which I'll say a bit about later, on the left. The site of this shaft is now surrounded by palisade fencing. This was actually a double shaft drawing coal in 2 cages at a time from the Busty and Harvey seams, so the headgear, as shown on the Bowburn Centenary banner, had 4 wheels, not the usual 2. Bowburn Hall Farm belonged to the colliery, and the farmhouse was demolished in the 1970s at the same time as the other colliery buildings. The house was an impressive 2-storey building built of good stone with 2 sets of stairs, 6 upstairs bedrooms and 6 rooms downstairs. Only its space now remains, but some of those remains are still visible. The colliery included a network of railway sidings and lines to take coal out onto what has come to be known as the Leamside Line, but was once part of the main line London to Edinburgh Railway. Within the site, coal wagons were shunted around by tank engines, and the engine shed was just across the road from the Hare and Greyhounds pub, which is now a carpet warehouse. The concrete base of the engine shed is still there in the woods. So too is this concrete railway buffer to stop engines or wagons being shunted over the end of the line. A drift was a tunnel that sloped downwards, unlike a shaft which went down vertically. The Coronation Drift was another way into the underground workings of Bowburn Colliery, which began to be cut on the 22nd of March 1937, that's 2 months before the coronation of King George VI, and was completed to the floor of the Low Main seam on the 9th of May 1939, a distance of 276 yards, descending at a 1 in 4 gradient. Coal tubs were drawn up the drift to the surface by thick steel cables. One end of one of these, buried when the colliery closed, can still be seen lying in the woods. From about 1956 till 2014, what is now Lenny's Taxis office was the village post office. Before that it had been at 13 Durham Road West, then in Ash Terrace and then Oxford Terrace, and it's now at the Jet Garage. This is the oldest building in Bowburn, though much altered and with a new house added at the back, and there's probably still a concealed cellar under the front office of Lenny's Taxis. The only older buildings near Bowburn, also much altered, are farm buildings at Youghal, Park Hill and Old Quarrington. Before we head up towards Bow and Burn Streets, take a look at these photographs taken from where the traffic lights are now, that is, from what was once the entrance to Bowburn Colliery and from the post office opposite. The picture of the traffic lights being installed in 1993 also shows the gap that was there before Bowburn Care Centre was built. Bowburn Medical Centre was built on what had previously been a garage site. This photograph shows the site after many garages had been cleared away and a new footpath had just been opened connecting the youth centre to the community centre. The surgery was opened by Kevin Phillips, the Sunderland and England footballer, on the 3rd of October 2002. Beyond the youth centre and Burn Street were several more colliery buildings. When, in 1906, Bell Brothers Limited founded their new colliery on the other side of the main road, they made use, over here on this side, of an old 1840 pit. That's the one that had been unsuccessful. They used it as a ventilation shaft. It drew foul air up from the mine and was therefore the upcast shaft. In 1934 this became the main man-riding shaft. From then on, all coal was drawn from the other one, the downcast shaft, and a few years later from the Coronation Drift. But now most Bowburn miners went down to work from here. The buildings over here were not demolished at the same time as the ones on the main colliery site. After the pit closed, the ones on the left of the lane were used by Maybe Johnson Limited, a plant hire company, as offices and workshops. When they were part of the colliery, they had been the large lamp cabin from which pit lamps and tokens were issued to the 2,000 plus miners, and some offices. They were demolished 8 years ago on the 24th of April 2017. On the right of the lane were the pithead baths, the medical centre, and an enlarged canteen, which were all officially opened on Saturday the 16th of January 1954. Before these were built, miners had to go home in their wet and dirty pit clothes, and their wives and sisters had to wash them. After the colliery closed, the baths building was used as a warehouse by Watson and Phillip Food Service, now part of the Brakes Group. These buildings were demolished in the early 1990s, and houses were built here by Barrett Homes of Newcastle. The DJ Evans Youth Club was opened on the 25th of October 1963 by the National Coal Board Area Manager and the Duke of Gloucester, President of the National Association of Boys Clubs. This was the new home of Bowburn Boys Club, which had been founded in 1935 by Mr. D.J. Evans, then a teacher and later the head teacher of Bowburn School, but which did not originally have their own premises. The new club was for a long time known as the Boys Club, or the Boysy. It was always intended to provide sessions for both boys and girls. The bridge along the track between the community centre and the library is not Bowburn Bridge. That is the one that takes the main road over Bowburn Beck and is scarcely noticeable today because so much of the beck is culverted on this side of the A177. The bridge you can see here is to take the track over very important drainage pipes. One is the main sewer connecting nearly the whole of North Bowburn to the sewage treatment works near the Amazon Distribution Centre. That runs deep below Durham Road, just above the chemists, and then below the new developments beyond that. The other pipe carries rainwater into the beck, which runs through a long culvert between the track and the library. This area can flood after very heavy rainfall if the culvert is too small to take all the water that tries to go through it and fills back towards Charlesworth Close and Burn Street instead. Charlesworth Close was built in 2005-2006 on the site of the former National Coal Board's maintenance department. Men working there repaired and maintained the colliery houses and other colliery buildings. The beck that flows past here is open but very overgrown. It comes from below Lansdowne Crescent, along the bottom of the recreation ground, and past Charlesworth Close before entering the culvert. There is a small footbridge over it from the allotments to the track leading up to Walker and Wylam Streets, and there are still iron railings across the beck next to the entrance from here into the recreation ground. There is also there what is left of an iron gateway. When the wreck and the rest of the park was first opened in 1930, this and other gates were kept locked at night. The first colliery streets were built between 1906 and 1908 to house the miners and their families who came to live here and work at the new colliery. These streets are one side of the Front Street, Durham Road, Stevenson Street, Clarence Street, Wylam Street and Walker Street. The other two colliery streets, Bow Street and Burn Street, were built in 1923. Some houses in Back Walker, Wylam Street still have the remains of outbuildings. You can see there where bricks have been used to fill in the openings where coal was delivered into coal sheds in the backyards, and where scavengers, contracted by the local council, collected human waste from the ash middens, which were known as netties. Water closets, or WCs, were installed in these netties in 1939, when the council's new sewage treatment works were constructed. Those are on the same site as they are today, though they were much smaller then. The photograph on the left, incidentally, shows the Pithead Baths in the background. This photograph was taken in 1939, soon after the new WCs were installed and the back streets were tarmacked over the new sewers. The bricks used to build the colliery rows are believed to be made at the Bowburn brickworks near Park Hill. These were owned by Tom Barker, who bought them with his winnings as an English fives champion. Fives was a game of a bit like squash, but played with a hard ball and no racket, just hands. The bricks were handmade, and on many windowsills in Wylam Street you can see where the girls who handled the soft clay held them before the bricks were baked. There are poppies by the front doors at numbers 1, 4, 20 and 38 Wylam Street, and also number 1 Walker Street. These are where John George Purvis, John Thomas Griffiths, Robert Bell, Thomas William Mitchell and Robert Lawson lived before they went off to fight in World War I. Their names are among those on the plaque in Bowburn Community Centre in memory of 35 men who were killed in that war. There are other poppies like these elsewhere in the village. They were placed there in October 2015. These two buildings, known as Bowburn Council Schools, were formally opened on the 12th of August 1909. They could accommodate 150 children in the infant school and 300 in the mixed school, which was for boys and girls aged up to the school leaving age of 14. The classrooms could each hold 50 children. After Bowburn Secondary Modern School opened in 1958, these two buildings became the junior school and the infant school. After the new Bowburn Junior School opened in 1974, they became Bowburn Infant and Nursery School, and after the new Bowburn Primary School opened in 2021, both buildings were abandoned. They are now being prepared to become a school for children with special educational needs. There is one corner of the main building, now behind a flat roof extension, where many wonderful photographs of sports teams and school classes were taken. Beneath the mound between Crotree's Lane and the playgrounds, it's believed that there is still a World War II air raid shelter. There were initially 3 of these at the school, the other 2 being between the main building and the field below. The other 2 were removed when that area was used to put up the demountable classrooms that were needed after the school leaving age was raised to 15 in 1947, before Bowburn Modern School opened in 1958. Bowburn originally got its name from the bow in the burn, the winding beck that snakes through the village. Before it flowed past Lansdowne Crescent and along at the bottom of the Wreck and beyond, it used to wind under where the motorway junction roundabout is today. You can still see its line on either side of the motorway, but that now carries hardly any water. Instead, a shortcut was built, another culvert, under the motorway beside the road that goes up to Old Quarrington. A Roman road once ran through Bowburn and Coxo, but despite what many people assume, it was not always straight. It took a detour to avoid crossing our beck 3 times. You can see similar small diversions where it crossed other streams further south. And the builders of the A1 motorway weren't daft either. The original 1930 groundsman in the park, Joe James, lived at Tersdale, but after he retired in 1952, a bungalow was built for the next one, Bill Pragnell. After the colliery closed, the district council took over the maintenance of the park and the recreation ground, and in later years there was no resident groundsman or park keeper, and the bungalow was demolished in about 2007. The recreation ground by then had very little play equipment. Huge improvements, however, including the multi-use games area, were made in 2010, thanks to the campaigning of a group called the Play Area Regeneration Committee, PARC, formed in 2001, and thanks to money from the Regeneration Fund that also helped refurbish the community centre and other projects. The Bowburn Miners' Welfare Recreation Grounds were first opened on the 2nd of August 1930. The original funding came from the National Miners' Welfare Fund, but, like the Institute and Welfare Hall, that's the later community centre, all running costs were paid by a levy on Bowburn miners' wages and fundraising. The park itself included a football pitch, a cricket square, 4 tennis courts, a bowling green and a putting green. All these except the football pitch fell into disuse after the colliery closed, and when the final improvements were made in 2011, after all the play equipment was put on the recreation ground, the tennis courts were grassed over and outdoor gym equipment was put on the old putting green. The hedge round the bowling green was removed, leaving the area open. Many sports teams and individuals using the welfare grounds were very successful. They included tennis players, one of whom played at Wimbledon, bowls teams, and most notably the Bowburn Colliery Welfare Football Club, who in the 1930s won the Durham and District League 3 years running, and many other trophies. Bowburn Junior School opened in 1974. The head teacher, when it moved from Wylam Street, was Mr. Tom Gill. Later heads were Mr. George Ford, Mrs. Lynn Lyons, and Mrs. Jackie Glass. This school was demolished after the new Bowburn Primary School opened in 2021, with Mrs. Glass as its first head teacher. It can take up to 540 children aged 5 to 11 and has 70 nursery places. Bowburn Secondary Modern School opened in 1958 with Mr. Alan Roxby as its first head teacher. It became part of the 2-site Lansdowne Comprehensive School in 1976, the upper school being at Coxo with head teacher Mr. Ian Bolt. It closed in 1985. That whole site is now part of Croxdale Park housing estate. This photograph of a sports day at the school shows the 2 headgears at the colliery, the nearest on the right being the upcast man-riding shaft, and the more distant one being the downcast shaft on the main colliery site on the other side of the Durham Road.